Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the 2026 Tepe Sigmund tournament being held in Sweden. It's a 7-round tournament, and what makes it really exciting is the fact that Magnus Carlsen is participating. And in the 4th round, Magnus Carlsen lost, which not many of us expected. He lost to the Dutch Grandmaster Jordan van Foreest. And well, in this video, I will be showing you 2 more rounds of action. And it's been an action-packed tournament. Magnus Carlsen looking dicey, but always exciting when the GOAT gets punched in the mouth in a chess tournament, which has yet to happen, literally. But metaphorically, it is quite exciting when he loses, because almost in a completely scripted manner, he then proceeds to make a resurgence. And that is exactly what I will be showing you today. First, in this 5th round game against the Chinese Grandmaster Zhu Jin-er, Magnus, with the white pieces, went for a ready. And after d5, let me unmute this so we can hear the clicks, went g3. So he went for standard setup. Black has many lines in the ready. She chose d5 and c5. And then she's going to try to play knight c6, and then black can either go for a full storming of the center or play like she did, which is g6. And now Magnus has a big decision to make. Either white goes for c4, d4, or d3. One of these moves. You have to commit to the pawn structure, and if you go for d3, then you're probably going to go for e4. So you have to decide which of the pawns you are going to push, and then ultimately which of the next pawns you are going to push. So d3 is the move. She goes bishop g7, knight bd2, knight c6, e4, and castles. Black has a very, very normal position. D and c pawns came forward together. You could push, and then you could advance like this, and then the position is a King's Indian. I mean, that's basically what we are playing. It also actually technically resembles a Sicilian defense. It just looks like white played a weird sideline of a Sicilian. So you get King's Indian structure vibes, you get King's Indian attack structure vibes, you get Sicilian type of vibes, you get all these different vibes. Magnus goes rook e1, she locks the position, and now white can play this move, knight to c4. This move prevents black from playing e5 completely, but then you will be subjected to black playing b5, so you don't actually get all of your pieces to all the squares that you want. Magnus ends up playing e5 himself, and then goes for this move a4. So this prevents b5, and it enables knight c4 when you will completely control the position, but it also gives up the b4 square to one of the potential corresponding knights. She plays h6, very flexible move. Now white will not ever put anything over here. Black can also play king h7, which is just kind of like vaguely a useful move almost all the time, because there are lines where you want to move your f-pawn, and then if you do that, your g-pawn is weak, and then maybe on this diagonal your king is, subjected to some stuff. So h6 is played, knight c4, bishop e6, and Magnus plays bishop d2, developing his last minor piece. Now again, for another game in this tournament, Magnus Carlsen is losing on the clock. He's down on time. Now here, black played knight b6, looking to trade the knight. Apparently the best move here was knight a5. b3 is also a possibility. That is what Magnus chooses, looking to recapture and reestablish some control in the center of the board. But she just goes immediately back to d5. Now, b3 knight d5 is almost like it's kind of like a juke out. Like basically black is like, I want to trade, and then when you go here, you weaken the c3 square, and since pawns don't go backwards, I basically play the same move, and now it's like white got an extra turn, but had to play this move b3, and it's not clear whether or not this is a good thing or not. Queen c7 is natural. Black will simply play king h7. The computer still likes that. And then it likes the knight going to h4 and white playing f4. I mean, the computer is just looking for all the resources to plug into the position. Magnus plays knight h4 straight away, and his logic for playing this move was, well, he's baiting Zhu Jin-er into playing the move g5, advancing a pawn in front of her own king, attacking the knight, and then his knight would move back to f3, and Magnus is saying, well, I did kind of to you what you did to me, only I did it better, except he didn't do it better. This is actually just bad, apparently. In fact, this has only helped black. It has helped restrict the knight. It has helped restrict the dark squared bishop. Yeah, it actually hasn't done any favors, according to the machine. And after queen d7, black is just doing very well. Magnus thinks for some time, plays h4, and forces black to commit 2 more pawns forward, which is certainly a way to play. Like, out of nowhere, the pawns went from g6, h6 to h5, g4, which is severely advanced. But the problem is that because of this severe advancement, you cannot actually re-enter the game at all with the knight. Like, it has no way back. The only way Magnus is going to get out of this position is to play the move f3. He's going to have to try to break apart the structure. And apparently, if you look at the stockfish lines here, after f5, after f7, f5, black is really, really thrilled with the position. White is very, very restricted, but it's a messy position against the best player in the world, so you have to maintain your nerves here. He plays queen c1, and she does in fact play f6. Magnus plays bishop h6. In some respects, playing f5 would have been more forcing, because f5, if you don't take me en passant immediately, allows me to then play f4. So for example, if f5 was played, there would be no bishop to h6, because after bishop h6 and queen h6, black can play rook f7 and be very close to advancing this pawn to f4. And if that pawn gets to f4, okay, you can take this pawn, but I have rook h7. If you check me, I play king h8, and then I'm going to get both my rooks over, and I'm going to start my attack. At some point, I will probably use my f-pawn, and even if I don't, your knight and bishop and all these pieces are totally stuck. In the game itself, she went f6, and this allowed Magnus a little bit more time to conjure up some sort of counterplay. He went for f3, and this is the last moment. The computer's screaming for f5 here, saying if you lock up this position and you don't allow Magnus to open things up, it's -1. Now, -1 is not really fair. It's -1 without a single trade, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, it's the 20th move of the game, and no trades have happened. Both bishops, both knights, both rooks, all the pawns. Very complicated. She went bishop h8. She refused the trade of the dark-scored bishops, and she now was like, well, this bishop is kind of useless. You're not going to have an opportunity to attack me. But now the position opens up a little bit. So we have pawn takes, bishop takes, pawn takes, pawn takes. 2 pawn trades. This makes things a little bit easier. Now maybe we are unclogging the position. Bishop to e4 is apparently a very good move here, but the clock situation is being managed fantastic by black. 300-point underdog, by the way. So we have bishop to g5. All right, she plays bishop h8, again refusing the trade. The position is unbelievably messy. I mean, if you look at these lines, it's like bishop here or a5. How can 2 moves on the complete opposite sides of the board both be good? Basically, it's like a stable situation where the center is so locked, there's really not a lot of forward progress. Black might try to bring the second rook. White could try to instigate on the queen side. Super messy, but they only have 10 minutes. They have to make some sort of decision. Knight to f1. She jumps the knight into c3, the square that she weakened a long time ago, and you know, controlling key squares. Now white plays knight to d2, and apparently black is better again after the move bishop d5, trying to trade off the lone protector of the king. Knight goes to e4, and now Jujin here, she needed to have a little bit more experience watching my content. We know other players like Fabiano, probably Magnus, you know, Nojibek, they watch my content. Apparently, the move here for a major advantage, an absolutely gangster move, is rook to f3. The threat being you take the knight and then you take on g3. It's basically just trying to target this this very weak pawn. And yeah, apparently if you give away the rook for the bishop, you have this queen infiltration, you have the backup of the rook, and this pawn landing here, covering the king square and 2 squares away from queening, is a major problem. I mean, if you play rook f3, there will be an anti-cheating drug test for you when the game is over. Rook f3 is just lunacy. She, of course, takes on e4, which is much more normal and plays like this. Magnus now with an attack against the king, but the rook sacrifice anyway, defending, because after bishop g7, there's queen takes g3. I mean, it looks like white's king should be mated here, but he's just barely defending himself. Now we have bishop takes g7, the king goes to h1, rook f2, a move away from checkmate. Magnus Carlsen with 50 seconds on the clock, defends it, and here the only way to continue the game, the only way, simply unfindable if you ask me, is king f8. You have to remove your king from the pin because there are some positions where you need to move the bishop, and it's the most useful move. You cannot move the queen, the rook, the knight, the bishop. King f8 is apparently the move. I don't even know how you can go about explaining this to somebody. She goes e6, which is also very reasonable. Magnus now brings the second rook, and you needed your king on f8 already, apparently. And that was the only way, because you know your bishop could maybe go to f6 and other pieces could go to f6. She plays knight e2. It's looking very, very likely that here you're going to win, because rook f1, there is knight to g3 check. The rook goes to a1. But now is the final moment. You have to apparently only play the move king to f8, because you are trying to put the bishop on f6 and get this pawn. You have to activate the bishop, and the only way to do it, you have to go to it's the F file. You cannot go to the H file. It is so unhuman to put your king and queen on the same file like this with this brewing everywhere. Knight G3 check is the move chosen, and now Magnus is winning. Now the attack is over because neither the knight nor the bishop can join the party because the bishop is pinned. You had to play king F8. It was extremely close. It was extremely tense, but Magnus finishes the job here. Rook G2 is incoming. Bishop F5 is there. Queen G7 mate. Black just ran out of steam. She just didn't have the mobility of the pieces to counter White's position. And actually after this game, Magnus was really disappointed. He was like, she outplayed me for the majority of the game. He was very complimentary towards Jujin. And it was crazy. I'm booting up this game. Like Black had an advantage for 80% of it, but Magnus made it scrappy. He made it a dirty fight, and he got it done. I mean, these positions, -1 is nothing. I mean, being down a goal in a Champions League that's -1. Yeah, this situation, this is not -1. Very different situation, if you ask me. So, on that note, I will show you his next game. Because Magnus played in the 6th round against the superstar, Andy Woodward. Magnus had the black pieces, and he opted for a King's Indian defense, which is awesome. Bishop E2, Bishop E3, there's a bajillion lines that you can play with White against the King's Indian defense. There's H3, H4, G3, F3, F4, 4 pawns attack, Knight F3, Bishop E2 is the main line. All the different places you can put this bishop. I'm probably forgetting some. Knight E2, the same-ish variation. He goes for the double bishop, which I actually used to play myself. And the idea, there's actually very quick attacking ideas with H4 and G4. I highly recommend this system, by the way, if you are looking for a line. Magnus went A5. This is not a move that I faced very often when I used to play this line with the white side. Now Knight F3, and now we have the green light, and we play Knight to G4. So he deliberately plays a weird King's Indian. Andy goes here. Magnus kicks out his bishop, and Andy puts the bishop on the home square. If you are watching this and you are low rated, or if you are watching this and you are a child, do not play like, if you're watching this and you're just a human being, don't play like this. This is too complicated stuff. How can I possibly explain Bishop E3, Bishop G5, Bishop C1, A5, H6, Knight G4 to a person? Essentially, White is saying that the way that Black played this was a little bit stupid. And that, you can't take these pawn moves back, but I can take my bishop back, and then we continue with the game. Magnus plays E5, a very normal move in King's Indian positions. And now, rather than developing his knight or his light-scored bishop, he just brings the knight back to F6. Now, granted, he's down again 20 minutes on the clock. He is completely improvising in the opening. He is using what he knows about chess combined with some analysis that he might have done, and he's trying to make decisions like that. White plays Bishop 2E3 back, and Magnus plays Knight G4, and Andy goes back to C1. So Andy is essentially offering him a draw. Andy's saying, if you go back to F6, I will be, we're kind of playing a game of cat and mouse here. Magnus thinks for 3 minutes. He's never in a million years making a draw, plays Knight D7. Knight D7 is a move that is designed to do the opposite of Knight C6. If Knight C6 had been played, White can always attack the knight. There's a lot of different places this knight could end up going, but Knight D7 will go to a completely different complex of squares. So Andy goes H3, and Magnus goes back with the knight to F6, and Andy once again plays Bishop to E3, and now there is no knight to G4. Magnus chops in the middle. That is why he put his knight on D7, because now his knight has a selection of squares to go to. It goes here, Andy goes here, and now we have knight to H5. Again, how do I possibly explain this to you guys? The knight goes to F6, to F6 to G4, to F6, to G4 to F6, to H5. And Black is trying to infiltrate along the dark squares. All these pawns are on light squares. Targeting the middle here. Rook E8, F5 is always an idea. Bishop D7 is going to be played. Very useful move. C6 could be played. Andy plays Queen D2. G5 is the move that Magnus opts for. So kind of similar to the Ju Jin-er game with H6, G5, except completely different structure of the pawns, right? Now we have Bishop to D1. Magnus plays Bishop E6. He's allowing the bishop to be captured. He's attacking the pawn on C4, and Andy plays B3. And basically, Magnus will now have to play A4, break in over here. It's a little bit too risky to play on this side of the board. White is very well protected there. F5 is reasonable, but at the end of the line, I think you just lose the game. We trade everything, and then I fork your rook and your knight, so that wouldn't work. So A4 is the move he chooses. And around here, I was thinking, well, this is not looking very promising for Magnus because the a-file is controlled. Now, when the rook goes over here and controls the a-file, it does kind of leave the king. The problem is that even if you play a move like this, you are never going to accomplish anything on the king side, right? I mean, Magnus is not going to land the queen on h2. There is quite literally no possible way to get there. But, you know, you can play g4, hg, and then queen h4, and even that doesn't do anything. Even if black got the queen to h2, if this knight was lost in the battle, there would be nothing here, right? One would think. Rook a7. So Andy is basically saying, Magnus, if you try to attack me, I will start countering you on the queen side, and I will win all of your pawns. c6 is the move chosen, preventing white from jumping forward with the knight. The knight goes back to e2, and Magnus plays knight f4, which it does not look like he has the ability here to play such a move. I mean, how can he commit to something like this? Now, I think this is all connected via the move queen to b6. Basically, at the end of this sequence, if after knight f4 there's a big trade and you play queen b6, this rook is hanging and then I hit the knight. So if all this clears out, these three pieces, this knight is unprotected. And that is why this sequence of moves is simply too dangerous. I will play queen b6, I will attack the rook, rook a2, and then I will have a lot of tactics against this knight. A little bit too dangerous, which is why Andy Woodward does bishop f2 instead. And actually, I was unbelievably impressed with how Magnus played this. He took, queen f6, and I am the, you know, I am the biggest glazer, of course, of one Magnus Carlsen. Here, Magnus sacrificed the bishop. Bishop takes h3. Look at that. Spotting that he could just give away the bishop completely. And if pawn takes, you take on f3, and there's no immediate danger to the king. But with black, you are going here and here, and slowly white's position of the king will just disintegrate. There is no good way to defend yourself here. If you try to play a move like b4, I'm not even going to take maybe. I'm going to play knight to e6. And I just have major problems here for your king, even though I'm only doing it with a queen and a bishop, which is rare. But because this rook is so out of the game, it's not participating whatsoever in the defensive task. Andy here, after bishop takes h3, thinks and plays b4. Bishop h3 could have caught him off guard, but still the position is around equal, and he's just taking on b7. He is completely ignoring what Magnus is doing near the king. Magnus backs up with the bishop, the knight goes to d4, and now Magnus plays rook a8. The second that Andy used this attack, Magnus now focusing over here, zips around and is infiltrating on the other side of the board. He has gotten, in these two games, he's really raised the level in playing these complex, imbalanced positions, even with low time. And he grabs the bishop pair, but the problem is that bishop was a non-factor. That bishop was not useful, and this is a very different case. This is a case where two bishops are actually dominated by bishop and knight. This bishop is a way higher quality than its counterpart, and this bishop is staring at its own pawns. So these pieces are not participating, and the rook is not coordinating well enough with the white pieces. If this knight just moves, the rook straight up has no job. None. All right? Bishop to d3, rook a1 check. Yeah, and Magnus has activated every single one of his pieces. There are going to be tactics brewing all over the place, and this rook can give a check, but the king will just go up. There is nothing here. Andy tries to trade it, and the rook zips over to h1. Andy is not going to be able to trade that rook, and his king is about to get pulled out of the castle. Knight to g4 wins the game on the spot. The idea is simply queen f6 check, and then there's queen f1 mate. Andy has to scramble now, goes like this. Knight h5 instead of knight g4, but it doesn't really matter. The attack breaks through. Rook a1 is going to win the queen. Andy has to give it away. Magnus picks the pawn up on e4 and just locks in the knight. This is the only remaining try for black to maybe, you know, save the game. But the rook hangs, the bishops are too weak, the king is too open. You're not going to have time to accomplish everything. And we end the game in style. We go for the bishop. If you take the knight, I take on g2. We give a check. We try to avoid it. But that's it. With my queen guarding my pawn, hitting your bishop, I disconnect the bishop from the game. You can take my knight whenever you want, but then I'm always taking on c4 or even going queen d2 and winning this bishop. Andy resigned here because if the bishop had taken on f2, you would play check. The king would move somewhere like here. You would take. The bishop is still hanging. You can give a check. I will zigzag my way out of the checks like this. And now if you go here, I just play c3 and it's mate. Actually, c3, there is rook d6 check. But even this pawn endgame is winning because of these pawns. Magnus, 2 wins in a row. You do not beat this man 2 times. Very nice wins. A King's Indian win. Very, very nice game. Magnus in this game played anti-kid chess. Andy Woodward is young, 15, 16 years old. He played anti-young man chess. Andy, young man chess, dare I say. But I got a bunch of other games for you around the horn. Eric Geisy versus Jordan van Foreest. Jordan just beat Magnus. Arjun also was having a very, very good event thus far, looking very clean. Jordan played a weird sideline h6 in a Slav, and then he put his bishop out like this. And from the opening, Arjun took some space. He played very aggressive f3, e4, developed his bishops like this. Now he castled. And basically here, black has a solid setup. White is looking to break forward, but it's not so simple. Rook d1, and then, yeah, Jordan decided that he would tuck in the king in bed with the horse because reasons, and now he can reposition a little bit, and also he can maybe use the f-pawn to attack and activate his rook, and also break into white's center a little bit. But before he could do that, here was Arjun rerouting his knight to a2 to support the b-pawn advancing, right? And then trying to break through on this side of the board. And if you do, your a-pawn is going to be massive. This a-pawn will very easily clear out these two pawns on its own, and white will go up a pawn. Rook d8, apparently Jordan just had to stick to this plan, because when he went here, he mixed too many plans. He had made this plan, then he switched from it. Arjun, meanwhile, walked the king to e3, and he completely stabilized his center. Very instructive, by the way, how here king f2, king e3 was played. Jordan fought back, Arjun played bishop f3, and basically throughout this game had everything totally under control until Jordan decided that he would try to break out of his position by force, and it was basically a terrible decision. Jordan should have continued to suffer with his bad position, something like a rook a5. I mean, just some mysterious moves, because, you know, white is just going to come in with these three pawn moves and his rook, and he's also going to maneuver the knight to d3 and c5 and e5, and Jordan decided to go for this, and this simply loses by force to e6 and e7. And even though it looks like you're going to win the pawn, I'm always creating threats. You can take my pawn on a4, but I go rook d8, and that's the end of the game. What Jordan, I think, might have just simply underestimated was this, and just rook d7. And yeah, white is just completely winning here. So Jordan self-destructed here after a very good win. He went e5, and he just never got the pawn back. I mean, the pawn just survived for the next 3-4 moves. So Jordan's going to be really annoyed at himself, I think, after a game like this, after such a big win against Magnus. And Eric Geisy wins another game, and he's completely just dominating in this tournament, looking fantastic. This game was very short, but the lore of it is incredible. Nils Grandelius played 4 games and has as many points as I do after 4 games, and actually the same score as all of you. Nodzerbek is doing decently well, but he has missed some chances in this tournament. And, you know, with white at an elite level, if you want to play uber solid, you will play uber solid, and you can potentially make a draw quite easily. And like against Nils, Magnus played the Benoni, whereas Nodzerbek played the Queen's Gambit Decline. So he did play something pretty solid. Nils played normally in this game. I thought Nodzerbek was doing some reasonable things, but yeah, white played in a way here that forces sort of black to be liberating his position by trading off the pieces. And, well, after some 20 moves, this was the position. And this is completely equal. Rooks and opposite color bishops and the same exact 4 pawns. The players made a draw, as you could imagine. Nothing is going to happen here. Nils will hold the draw. And apparently what Nils said, I saw this on social media, Nils said that when they shook hands and they made a draw, Nodzerbek said to him, "Congrats," which is some of the most cold-blooded. He congratulated his opponent for getting his first points of the tournament. Bro, he did not mean that unless something is lost in the translation here. Like, I don't know if he was annoyed that Nils played in a way that was very boring and kind of traded all the pieces. I don't know if he was annoyed at himself for his opening choice, because he could have chosen a different opening. He could have played the Dutch defense. But, and I also don't exactly know if the players misheard each other. I mean, I don't know. Maybe there's some Sweden, Uzbekistan, there could be some, but of course they are completely fluent in English. But yeah, apparently Nils he told him congrats, which is crazy. What a crazy thing to say. This game with Andy Woodward and Erdomush. So it starts with Erdomush, clearly a Gotham fan, by the way. E6, B6, one of my favorite openings. This is one of my ancient ones. Taught this back in 2020. Played this line with so much success. It's a great line, by the way. You try to trade the bishop for the knight. As you get stronger, though, they start playing this move. Very sneaky move, preventing your bishop from coming forward. And white just gets a very chill game. Although there is this move, knight e4. I actually have played this move myself. And the idea of this move is to trade the knights, and white just kind of can't develop the queen side so easily. So he's got to develop these pieces. Andy played bishop f4, clearly hasn't seen the system before, and then decides to play h4. So maybe he hasn't seen the system before, but he remembers some of the analysis because this is the critical way to play with knight to g5. Then he trades the light squared bishop, and everything he's done is fantastic. Modern day computers have inspired a lot of players to play like this. You have ideas to put something on g5. You have ideas to play h5, h6. Knight d7, castles, and Andy just proceeds to, take as much space as possible. e4 and e5. Erdomush plays f5, trying to block up the position. Andy chops down in the middle of the board, keeps the tension here with the bishop and the queen, and then we have e5 played by black. So very aggressive move here. And after the trade, the white king is going to be in the middle of the board, and that's why we castle. And we go to a queen and rook endgame. The queen on c7, threatening. Black defends himself. Rook e1, rook d8, players improving. It looks like here Andy is just smashing down the position. Takes, rook e8, queen c4, king f8, queen d4, and b5 played. So white has 5 pawns and a queen. Black has 5 pawns and a queen. They're the exact same pawns. But optically, this looks really, really bad because you're going to win a pawn here, and then you're going to move your king, and it's like, how is black going to defend this position for so long? Queen h8, king f7, we have f3, which is apparently not the best move, and we have b4. And b4 is apparently losing because of pawn takes this and the move h5. So Andy needs to play h5 here. And then after pawn takes, queen takes, and king e6, the only winning idea for white is g4. But it's not that hard to spot. Because if you take, you trade the queen. And if black goes queen b2, there's queen f5. And this endgame is 2 versus 1, but there's queen e4 check. Now, maybe black can run away to no, I don't think black can run away anywhere. You have queen f4, and you win this pawn. And Erdomush, when this happens, h5 is winning on the board for Andy. If he plays this move and chops down the pawns, he can probably win the queen endgame, but he goes here. And that allows black just enough time to clear out that side of the board. And now, despite your extra pawn advantage and h5 played now, this position is a draw. So for the second time in this tournament, Erdomush is saving a queen endgame. He did the same against Erigaisi. And the white king is simply, it's too exposed. Like with white here, you can try to make as much progress as you can, and that's what happened, and they give a million checks. But you can never move your g-pawn because there's going to be this. But right here, if Andy had gone h5 instead of allowing a3, he would have been apparently winning. Now, chess is hard, and queen endgames are very tricky, but Andy, yeah, I mean, Andy having a potentially very, very good tournament could have beaten his fellow prodigy, but then he goes down to Magnus in the next round. In this game, it was the madman, Arjun is the madman, versus Jujin and Arjun Erigaisi is the worst nightmare opponent of any 2600 rated player. He literally plays the Peer's Defense. Have no idea when the last time the Peer's Defense was played at 2750 level in classical chess. For all I know, it was probably Arjun himself. Arjun in this game, doubling his own center pawns, deliberately making things very provocative and complicated, lashing out with pawns, inviting his opponent into the complicated forest. And what he does against 25 and 2600 rated players is he plays really fast and really uncompromising. And because he plays really fast and really uncompromising, they spend a lot of time trying to navigate the waters. Here we have opposite side castling with a totally insane position. I have no clue how he's going to make progress here, though, because this is totally locked. So h4 played by white, right? She's going for the attack. He goes knight h5, happily inviting a fight, happily inviting the tension in the middle. He's not taking the pawn on d6. White here ends up chopping things down and desperately searching for a queen trade, which Arjun is not having. Queen takes b7, queen e3. It looks like white will never lose this. How can white lose? b2 is the only square you can get mated on, and it's defended by the knight on a4, and you absolutely cannot get close. What is Erigaisi going to do here? He plays queen f4. All right, he's still trying to maintain a time advantage, but it's not so easy because the position is so complicated. And now this move, queen b5, and you're going to lose a couple of pawns there, but not on Erigaisi's watch. Right, he grabs the pawn on f3 first. We have queen a5, knight f6 attacks the rook comes back to attack the queen continues to cover the pawn, and also threaten white's h4 pawn. And for the second time in this tournament, Arjun just had a game with white against Niels Grandelius where he had 3 pawns promoting on this side of the board and 4 promoting on this side. Do you remember that game? Well, now he is on the opposite side. Only Arjun Erigaisi can play a mirror image position with 3 passed pawns on one side of the board in the same exact tournament. We enter an endgame. The position is still hovering around equal, but white only has about 3 minutes to make 9 moves. Not very easy, and we are in an endgame where black is up a pawn, position is mighty complicated. She goes knight d7, Jujiner. We have rook e8, a4, there we go. We're going to get a pawn race. B takes a3, knight takes e5, rook e5, ba3, knight in 3, bishop in 2. Here we go. It's a race. King to f8, Arjun centralizing his king, a4, f5, bishop d5, king d6, walking voluntarily in a discovered attack, but then you're going to get the king to c5. The position is still equal. It's equal, but even in the endgames, Erigaisi is very, very tricky. He's not going to, this is the second time in this tournament, he's going to drown the opponent in a messy, complicated endgame. Rook h7, he only has 2 pawns left. She only has 1, and the c4 pawn is looking very delicate. Rook g7, Arjun plays rook a7. He doesn't have many resources left. King c3, but now we have rook a3 check. Here you had to go to king e3. You needed to go this way. Give away this pawn and run and basically end up in rook versus rook and knight. That's probably what you have to do because now you're going to have a lot of difficulties getting to those pawns. Bishop c8 played, but the pawn runs away. The last chance here was to play rook c7 check, and if the king moved, probably move the rook back. And if rook c7, king b6, you go rook e7. You put the rook on the e7 square and maybe try to come back and trade rooks or defend a little more actively. This is apparently wrong because now Arjun's pawns get on the dark squares and it's losing. You don't have enough time anymore to save the position. All Arjun needs is 1 pawn, and he's going to promote and he's going to win. And Erigaisi only won this game because he had 1 pawn remaining. Just unbelievably close. This is a winning endgame. You put the king here, you get the rook to the first rank, and he wins. He wins another game. This dude is on fire, man. Arjun Erigaisi, after 6 rounds, has 4.5 points, 3 wins against Grandelius, Van Forest, and Jujin. He's up 12 rating points. He's got Woodward. That's what happens when you draw against Magnus Carlsen effortlessly to start the tournament. Not much happened in this game between Erdomush and Nojabek. Today, Nojabek showed up with the Najdorf. This is not the Queen's Gambit decline. This is one of the most combative openings in chess. The problem with the Najdorf Sicilian is both guys have probably studied it so much, although bishop e2, e6, f4, bishop e7, Erdomush spent 13 minutes on this move and then another 18 minutes on this move. So he was down on time immediately. And this position, actually, this structure resembled Jordan Magnus. You might remember in that queenless position, but this is a very different type of game because in that game, Black's bishop was on d8 and he struggled to develop. This is a very different type of game. Nojabek gets all his pieces on good squares. Erdomush does not get the same type of position as was in the game between Magnus and Jordan. Here, Black is active, castling. White's king is in the middle of the board. Yeah, the game actually doesn't end it doesn't take very long. White, despite his extra pawn, cannot get off the first and second rank. The bishop is squished. It cannot move. The rook cannot move. You have to protect yourself. But Black has nothing better because if Black allows the game to go on with a move like king b7, White will play here, trade rooks, and win because he's going to be up a pawn. So you basically play a Najdorf where you sacrifice a pawn. White plays very safe. That move never happened. That was a broadcast input error. And the players just make a draw. So basically, you know, in the Najdorf, sometimes you grab each other and you both jump off the cliff together. And hopefully you have parachutes. Or maybe one, and then the other carries the other. And last but not least, we have Jordan Van Forest versus Niels Grandelius, another player who's going to try to score a win against Niels. We have an Italian, which is a good maneuvering game, but even one of the players in the tournament who is struggling without many points will be able to equalize here, so you would think. But Niels, of course, having a bad event, taking a little bit too much time, and despite Jordan not playing, and by the way, here, the move pawn to d5, just emphatically breaking open the center. would have been good, even though white has the bishop pair. He actually got himself into trouble, Nils. He allowed Jordan to really, transform the structure. White has more space. White is going to play e5 and d5 and try to start some sort of attack. And this is a typical position for Jordan. He beats people in stuff like this all the time. He gets a very nice advantage here. He has ideas to sacrifice. He has to play g4, h4, h5. He actually takes the wrong path again and allows Nils to play f5, trying to lock up the position. And then Nils gets to the opposite colored bishops, but white is just dominating here. He's going to put the bishop on e5. Position's completely miserable. Nils is basically sitting there waiting for the dentist to come in and operate on his tooth and finish the procedure. He has no moves. He's just sitting there waiting. And, well, he's going to mess something up because this is the kind of tournament that he's having. As we cross the time control, this is a mistake. And here, rook f7 is the way to go for Jordan. He needs to give away the 2 rooks for the queen and then play g5. Rook f7 and then g5 and just push forward. It's a little hard to give away your pawns. He goes here, and that's not the right plan. He does it like this. He goes, he spends 11 minutes here because he had calculated rook g4, and he completely missed rook e5. And the point is that if you take, you actually get countered here and you lose. So that's completely brutal. Jordan here, after the time control, rook f7 is basically winning on the board. I mean, everything has worked out. He went for g5 because he calculated hg and then rook f7, which is winning. But there is this, and this doesn't work because you sag the rook. And if pawn takes, I just take, and everything is defended, and I'm going to trade the queen. And actually, this position is completely losable for white because black all of a sudden has an avalanche of pawns, and you have no attack anymore. You have no mate, king is safe. So, yeah, Jordan played very well, but loses his advantage. We have an opposite colored bishop endgame. And this one, a draw after 57 moves. And unlike Nojabek, Jordan did not tell Nils Grandelius congrats after making the draw. Unless he did, and I just missed it. So, your standings after 6 rounds. Erigaisi 4.5, Erdomush and Magnus with 4. If Erigaisi wins the last round with the white pieces against Woodward, he wins the tournament. If Magnus wins and then there's some draw, or Erdomush wins, then there will be a tie and maybe a playoff. Nojabek 3.5 out of 6, decent event. Honestly, a lot of the top players are having a decent event. Even Woodward might not be down rating. Yeah, he's up a point on his score. Jujiner has 1.5, and she's break even in rating. And Nils is, he's not doing very well. He has 1 point out of 6. Tomorrow we have Carlsen Erdomush. That should be very fun. Their first matchup in classical chess ever, and maybe ever, by the way. I'm not sure they will ever play again. Magnus is 1 foot in, 1 foot out, and Erdomush and he don't really play classical tournaments against each other, so we will see. That is all I have for you today. Get out of here.